Hello YouTube, this is Sam Gerrans from Qur'anite.com. Today is Saturday the 1st of May 2021 and I'd like to continue the series of basically descriptions or talks about the surahs starting from Surah 50 through to the end of the Qur'an, which I started some time ago and I really want to kind of push through with that. I haven't uploaded a video for the last 10 days or so because I've been really busy. If you follow this channel, you know what I'm up to, as it were. I've been working very intensely on my accompanying book to the Qur'an, A Complete Revelation, which I want to release together. And the second book, the God Protocol, is now finished. It's being read by somebody. I'd like to get some notes, but you know, the work's done. So that's what I've been doing. So now I can get back to some other things, which is really nice. The last surah we looked at was 67. So yeah, unsurprisingly, today we're going to be looking at Surah 68. So let's just jump straight in and get on with it. So Surah 68, Noon, by the pen and what they inscribe. Now, before we go any further, Noon is one of what they call in English the mysterious letters. If you don't know the Quran very well, you may not know, but if you do know the Quran well, you will know that there are disjointed letters at the beginnings of particular surahs in the Quran, the meaning of which has eluded the traditionalist for a long, well, actually always has done. If you'd like to know what this means, I'm not going to go through it right now, but you can. I have a very long presentation which summarizes my entire work on that. It's 7 hours long. You need a pen and paper and to concentrate. But if you do that, you will know what this means. So, but we'll just leave it for now. Just suffice it to say that Noon is the last of these mysterious letters in the text, and so just to bear that in mind. And in brief, Noon sort of is one of the sort of segment markers, as you'll see if you go through my work on this, of this larger segment between Surah 50 and the end of the Quran, each of which presents what I would call a vigil or a series of surahs which to be presented as units of warning and of teaching, which was the mode and the mission and the tradition actually, which Muhammad himself was following, as we shall see as we go through this. But anyway, I'm going to move on from that now. So, by the pen and what they inscribe, thou art not by the favour of thy Lord possessed. Now, I'll just read what I have here. This is seen by some to refer to what the angels write. I don't know what the basis for that is, but I can guess. It's certainly nothing that I can find in the Quran precisely. The context, in my view, points to a different conclusion. I see this oath as an anticipation of the calumny written about Muhammad most prolifically by those who claim to follow him, but by others also, filled as such writing is with personal calumny and other contradictions with the book he was commissioned to convey. And I go on a little bit into more detail there. Now that's a personal view. You may choose to disagree with it, and I can't point to objective evidence, but certainly it is true that plenty has been written about Muhammad, which objectively, this isn't a sort of religious position, it's just a logical position, which contradicts the book that he brought. So that's my view. You can take it or leave it. To continue. And for thee is a reward unending, and thou art upon a tremendous tradition. Now, the word here for tradition is ḥurūf, and ḥurūf is, I have some more notes which I'm going to briefly read to you as well. This is often translated character or nature or way, and this is not incorrect, but has been used to obfuscate or to hide the broader sense by those who would pour honours upon the messenger which the Qur'an denies him. The word ḥurūf occurs at just one other place in the Qur'an, and that's 26:137. There it is found in the mouths of those who disbelieve as something pertaining only to the tradition of former peoples. From this it follows that ḥurūf denotes an accepted code of practice, a way of doing things pertaining to a wider purview than that of mere personal morality or character. Now, the reason why I go into all of this is because, as you'll see in the last edition of this book, which is, I've spent really about the last 18 months revising and upgrading, if you look at the Traditionalist translation, he'll say something like, thou art of great moral character or something like this. Well, okay, but where do you get this from? Because what I'm saying is, and this is really part of my methodology, it's called pan-textual analysis, going to, you can't just sort of pick and choose. You can't just cherry pick, we're going to have this meaning here, and we'll have that meaning there, and we'll take another meaning over there. Well, I mean, you can do that, but then it doesn't sit very well with a book which claims to be consistent. So if it is consistent, then we have to hold its feet to the fire, right? So what's sauce for the goose is then also sauce for the gander. So in this other context, this word means that. So that's what I'm saying that it means here. Now, I'm not denying or in any way seeking to diminish the character or morality of Muhammad, and we have that attested to in other places in the Qur'an. I'm just saying that's not what it means here. And so what's the tradition that he was on? The tradition that he was on was that of a warner. And this mechanism of warning, which I summarize and detail in the God Protocol, really consists of warning a people, and usually the elite of those people, being denied, and then that community being destroyed. That's the tradition. That's what we see of, Noah, Hud, Salih, Lot, and I would argue others. I'm not going to get into that right now. But that's the tradition that Muhammad was on. And just to continue, the case I am making is more than supported by the use of the preposition ala here, which, when used without reference to a particular verb, as here, indicates on or upon, and is used often to denote adherence to or standing upon, in the sense of basing one's assumptions upon. The sense then is that the messenger is upon a tremendous tradition, the tradition of all messengers, the tradition of those who came with their warnings, were typically rejected, and whose ministries were followed by punishment from God, a pattern to which the verses at 68, 5 through 6 allude. I continue and cite also Muhammad Asad, who came to very much the same conclusions, completely independent from me, because I didn't read his notes until after I'd already done this. Anyway, let's continue. And thou art upon a tremendous tradition, and thou wilt see, and they will see. Which of you is mad? Now, just going back slightly, thou art not by the favour of thy Lord possessed. Having spent as much time as I've just spent deeply engaged in the question of the mechanism that I call the God Protocol, accusations of being possessed is one of the standard actions by the deniers to the messenger. There's a whole set of actions that repeat, and this is one of them. So this is just standard fare, the accusation of being possessed. To continue, which of you is mad? Verse 6. Thy Lord best knows who has strayed from his path, and he best knows the guided. Now, this isn't really what I choose to spend my time doing, like inveighing against the traditionalist, but I do have to critique him, mainly because his function is so much really bound up in the actions of what I would call a gatekeeper. He really acts as a gatekeeper against the Qur'an. He's got this whole other thing that he says that you have to follow, and without which you can't possibly understand a book which claims to be from God, claims to be complete, and claims to be consistent. Apparently that's not good enough. You need something else. And within this worldview, and there have been other worldviews, historically, but generally they kind of got stamped on and killed. The idea is that without this other literature, you can't be guided. Well, that's, again, that would be fine, except that it's in unambiguous tension, to say the least, with the book which the traditionalist claims is his foundational scripture, which is a problem, not for me, for him, because apparently God guides. Muhammad doesn't guide. So, in fact, we have that said, explicitly elsewhere. You don't, thou dost not guide those that thou lovest. So it's actually God who guides. It's not even the messenger or even any messenger. And again, I would only say, I say as somebody who came to the Qur'an and read it, like a book, like it says that it is, that we're not to make any distinction between messengers. And yet that's all that happens, within this. I call it a religion. I was somebody sort of picked me up on that and said it's not a religion, it's a way of life, or at least other Muslims say it's a way of life. Well, okay, whatever you want to call it, it is what it is. Let's continue. Then obey thou not the deniers. They wish that thou shouldst compromise, then would they compromise. And ain't that the truth, as they say? I mean, looking at what's happening now, the what I call the process of Furqan being rolled out under the aegis of the COVID, people are, they want you to compromise. And I've seen this so much, with people that I'm close to, relatives, who are being really mentally coerced to compromise with a system which is fundamentally idolatrous, satanic, and as far as I can see, to kill them. So, this process is always happening, no matter on what front. One thing I have learned about the satanic system is it's never happy. It doesn't matter how much you give it. It always wants you to just compromise a little bit. As it happens in my line, since I've been doing this, and it's. If you see that I'm sort of somewhat looking kind of fresher and relieved, it's because I've been doing just this for 7 years straight, and quite a lot of other stuff, life stuff happening at the same time. So coming to the end of this, block of work is a wonderful feeling. Over that 7 years, what I've seen, and I've seen it repeat and repeat and repeat, I'm not drawing any direct parallels. I'm just saying, in my sort of little way, modest life, as it were, you get people quite often, they'll say, oh, Sam, I love your work, but can you just not talk about that? Or can you just not talk about this? Or but just this one thing, and just not that. And what you see is, if I had compromised with any of these points, because my position is that if I'm, you might as well be hanged for, a sheep as a lamb. You might as well go for, if you're going to do this, say what you mean, because if they come after you, you're not going to be sitting there, very happy that you compromised. No, say what you mean. And what I can see is that had I done that, had I gone that way, there'd be nothing left, because they're never happy. So stick to your guns. That'd be that's my experience, and that's, I suppose, if you want to put it that way, it's my advice. So let's continue. They wish that thou shouldst compromise, then would they compromise. Neither obey thou every despised swearer of oaths, backbiter, going about with calumny, hinderer of good, transgressor, sinful, relentless, and useless. I think we'll just stop there. Again, and I'm not drawing any direct parallels, but just life is life, no matter, who one is. Going back to the, people wishing you to, if you could just tone this down, just not mention that. This subject, that subject, the other subject. The corollary to that, or, a sort of adjunct to it, is something we all experience. The whole trolls, hater thing, etc. And you just have to develop a thick skin. And it comes in all kinds of forms, as you'll find if you do anything, along these lines. And there is no pleasing them. You just have to kind of stay on your track and not listen to any of it. I mean, I suppose when I get it, there's this brief moment of like, is this right? Are they right? And if they're not, why do I care? I might even do a kind of a bigger video about, trolls and haters and all this sort of stuff. It's a whole genre, and it's really changing. It's quite interesting. When I first started this, it would be more along the lines of, die Mossad agent, we're going to come and chop your children up, whatever it is. That's kind of gone away, or pretty much. I mean, you get occasional ones, but these are the kind of beginner trolls. These are people not very good at it yet. The new trolling is more like, love your work, something, couple of messages, blah blah, and then you get to the real nub of it. They're becoming much more sophisticated, but the answer is just don't obey them. Neither obey thou every despised swearer of oaths, backbiter. Yeah, you get a lot of that as well. I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm just explaining the mechanism. You find people, they'll kind of fall in love with you and then fall right out of love with you again, and then suddenly you're evil and whatever. You just have to get used to it. That's the discipline. There's a great film. I like it anyway. Well, I don't watch a lot of films now, but I used to watch them. I used to actually get paid to watch them at one point, called Heat. And there's this discussion between the two principal characters. I think it's Robert De Niro is one of them, and the other one is Al Pacino. And one's the criminal and one's the policeman. They have this kind of just face-to-face in a cafe. And anyway, I won't go into the whole film, but that's the discipline. You have to be whatever, this guy, this Crim has chosen this route, and his life is what it is. But, he says that's the discipline. And that's right. If you choose a path, you just have to take the discipline that goes with it, because it will have one. It's just how it is. A lot of people, they don't want to do the work. They think my life is sort of, I don't know what they think it is, but they think perhaps, I don't know, open top vehicles screaming through Basel, Switzerland, warning the elite through a loudhailer or something. No, most of my work is reading documents, checking grammar, it's work. It's just lots and lots and lots and lots of it, and just doing it every single day. And that's the discipline. But you get the kind of mosquitoes of trolls and haters and all the rest of it. Just to say, you have to kind of, if you're going to choose a path, and choose it and just sort of accept that and try to filter it out as best you can. I mean, of course, as Elvis Presley said, if you cut me, I bleed. And I'm the same way. It's not like it just rolls off my back, like water off a duck's back. No, sure, it gets to you, but you just have to learn to kind of put up with it. Relentless and useless. I go into reasons for that, and for that use of words. And I'm not going to read the note here, but I do find it quite telling. To continue. Yes, make sure it's in shot. Because he is possessed of wealth and sons. When our proofs are recited to him, he says, legends of the former peoples. We will brand him on the snout. And it does say snout here, in the sense of like an elephant's trunk or a pig's snout, which obviously alludes to the kind of broader characteristics of that type of individual. We have tried them as we tried the companions of the garden when they swore they would reap its fruit in the morning, and made no allowance. And by made no allowance, it means, they did not make an allowance for the will of God. They kind of, what's it in English? They relied only upon their own strength and their own abilities and so on. But we're all working under God. God increases and decreases. God makes rich and makes poor. God makes obtain. God, that's how it is. And when we lose that, we become confident in our own strength, in our own might, in the power of our own arm, as it were. That is, quite often that's the sort of, as they say, pride cometh before a fall, and that's the truth. Then an itinerant from thy Lord went about it while they slept, and in the morning it was as if reaped. Then called they to one another in the morning, go early to your tilth, if you would be reaping. So they departed, whispering together, no needy one will enter it this day against your will. And they went early, determined upon their purpose. Then when they saw it, they said, "We have gone astray." If you look at it in the context, I mean, this is an actual narrative. It's a story. Just see it as if in sort of cinema terms. They actually thought they'd gone to the wrong place. They were going to reap what they had invested in. And this is a metaphor for the types of people that have just been described in the early verses of this surah. Their entire, I mean, we're kind of distanced from this today, but farmers quite often borrow, and then in order to plant seed, they invest in it, and their entire investment is in this thing, okay? So this is a metaphor for life, that people have invested everything in this life. They're coming now to reap their rewards. And what do they find? They find that there's nothing there. There are several kind of comparable metaphors, similes in the Qur'an like this one. So, does one want to reach the moment of reaping of one's life and find that everything has been taken away? And they went early, determined upon their purpose. Then when they saw it, they said, "We have gone astray. Nay, we have been deprived." Said the most moderate of them, "Said I not to you, oh, that you did but give glory?" They said, "Glory be to our Lord. We were wrongdoers." Now, we were wrongdoers. If you know the Qur'an well, you'll recognize that as a recurrent motif. We were wrongdoers. Where do we hear this all the time? We were wrongdoers. In the context of those communities which were destroyed. Destroyed how? Destroyed under that mechanism that I'm calling the God protocol, which was the tradition upon which Muhammad himself was following. Okay, when you read the Qur'an a lot, especially if you kind of translate it consistently, you'll find these key terms, key words that repeat, and they operate as a sort of an internal signaling system. So that same motif, that same collocation implicitly implies or directs the attention towards all the other places where it comes. So that's what that's doing. Then they approached one another, blaming one another. They said, "Woe is us, we transgressed all bounds." Now, what does that remind you of? Well, obviously it reminds one of the times of the mutual recriminations in the fire. This is a narrative located in this world, but which has, as we shall see, has sort of implications for the life to come. The Qur'an references the things that we know so that we can anticipate things that we don't know and haven't seen. That's really the essence of taqwa, of prudent fear. It's a sort of a sensible, rational anxiety, if you want to call it that way, of precluding the possibility, a sort of forward-thinking, high-agency ability to foresee events that haven't happened yet and to take action against them. It may be that our Lord will give us in exchange better than it. To our Lord do we turn in hope. So at that moment, when their entire investment and life and everything that they've put everything into is shown to have been turned into dust, then they repent. You see, then that's when it happens. Think of Pharaoh, just, I believe in the God of the children of Israel, and God says to him, now? Doesn't work that way. To continue. 33. Thus is the punishment, and the punishment of the hereafter is greater, had they but known. Okay, so we've established the tradition upon which Muhammad was operating. We've now had a metaphor which outlines the plight of those who we described above, those people who were, in the modern interpretation we could talk of as the trolls and so on. I mean, I'm sure there's much worse than that. Hinder of good, transgressor, sinful, relentless, useless, because he is possessed of wealth and sons, backbiter, going back slightly, every despised swearer of oaths. You know, all the people that make all the noise, that I'm sure I'm not alone in finding it all so tedious. You know, one day it's going to be quiet, and all of that will stop, and then we will have the truth, you know, for better or for worse. Now, obviously, Muhammad was a messenger of glad tidings and of warning. So now we have, you'll notice if you read the Qur'an a lot, very rarely will you find reference to suffering or to hell without sort of correlating promises or good things for the believers. And that's what we find here. So, verse 34. For those of prudent fear with their Lord are the gardens of bliss. 35. Shall we then make those submitting like the lawbreakers? What ails you? How judge you? Okay, we'll stop there now. They're professional rhetoricians or speakers. I'm not going to name because there's no point, but I'm sure people can think of them, who have wonderful, you know, who bear charmed lives on the basis of turning people's minds against God. And one of the arguments is that, oh, God's unfair. You know, this bad thing happened to some good person, or this good thing happened to some bad person. Sure, yeah, but it seems a little bit premature to judge a 3-act play halfway through the first act. And so, yes, it can look that way. But what the Qur'an is giving us is the fuller picture. And so, you know, certainly, you know, evil men seem to be in the ascendancy today, or holding the you know, the high ground. But I've yet to read of anybody who managed to avoid death. You know, there's no VIP lounge the other side of it, so far as I know. I don't think there is any special, you know, privileges or preferential treatment. So, you know, I try to keep, you know, the whole picture, and that's what the Qur'an guides us towards. So, certainly, it can seem as though people getting away with everything, but you know, we're only really, you know, in halfway through the first act. So, shall we then make those submitting like the lawbreakers? What ails you? How judge you? Now, I'm going to stop there. As I've mentioned in many of my talks, but I'm certain some people won't have reached this. We're now going to reach what I call hanging am statements. It's long and involved and requires a lot of analysis to identify them. But in short, what they are basically rhetorical questions. If this, then that. Okay? I'm not going to explain, you know, how they work in terms of the mechanics, but that's what they are. The Qur'an has within it a whole series of these hanging am statements, which is like if this, and then it presents like a proposition, and then it gives you the answer. So that's what we're going to go into, and we have a couple of those. All of this is detailed ad nauseum in my work. Okay. If you have a writ wherein you study, and then I've put it in quotes, you have therein whatever you choose. So if you have a book that says that, or if you have oaths binding upon us, reaching to the day of resurrection, quote, you have whatever you decide. So these are the two propositions. If you're claiming this, if you claim that you have whatever you choose, or if you claim, or you have a writ that tells you this, or if you claim that you have oaths binding upon God, that God will do what you decide, binding upon him until the day of resurrection, then comes the answer. Ask thou them, which of them is for that guarantor? Now, just briefly, we get this. We have a sort of parallel of this today. In things like positivism, you know, what do you hear? This kind of moronic pseudo philosophy. Yes, the universe. The universe is, loves you, whatever it is. The secret, visualization. You create your own reality. All of this stuff. People kind of, and there are other hanging arm statements which treat the same sort of thing in other places in the Qur'an. It's assuming or kind of asserting that you have this kind of hold over objective reality. Anyway, and it says, ask thou them which of them is for that guarantor. So who's guaranteeing this? Again, another hanging arm statement or question. If they have partners, so if that's the assertion, then let them bring their partners if they be truthful. So if they say they have some special dibs with God or some special partner that gives them some kind of like preferential, in within this particular situation, okay, let's see it then. But they can't do that because they haven't got it. 42. The day the shin is uncovered, and they are invited to the submission, but they are not able. Now, I'm not going to go into what that means right now because it would take too long. But if you want to know, then once this goes up, the final version of this, you'll be able to read it, and it will be available for free, as all my work is, to continue. Their eyes will be humbled, humiliation covering them, for they had been invited to the submission when they were whole. So leave thou me with those who deny this narrative. We will lead them by degrees whence they know not. So having brought the listener to this point, they refuse. You're not responsible to convince them of anything. All you can do is present it. As part of my work over the last couple of weeks, writing up and actually rewriting the God Protocol, I was struck by a verse which says that they denied without having obtained even 1/10. So the fact that they don't understand or they don't learn, or they said to, I think it's Salih, oh Salih, we can't understand much of what you're talking about. What are you blabbering on about? Doesn't matter. You make it as clear as you can. You present it. They have access to it. They don't take it. That's up to them. I mean, everyone has to choose, right? 44. So leave thou me with those who deny this narrative. We will lead them by degrees whence they know not. And isn't that how life works? Isn't it? We are led by degrees. If you think back over your life, if you're more than like sort of 10 years old, you can remember how you felt when you were 14, and then it sort of morphed into your 18, and then sort of different sort of things came in when you're in your 20s and 30s, and how it goes like that, you see, and now you are here. It's a very subtle process, and again goes back to what we saw earlier, which was about being guided. Either God guides or he doesn't guide. Thy Lord best knows who has strayed from his path, and he best knows the guided. So, verse 45, and I will grant them respite. My plan is firm. My plan is firm. There's no escape. This is the firmest plan. Death is undefeated. Now we return to another hanging arm statement, verse 46. If thou askest of them a reward, so if that's the position, if that's what they're saying, answer comes. Then are they burdened by debt? Now this is a rhetorical mechanism. What it means is that Muhammad didn't ask a reward for his process of warning. Okay, he wasn't there warning the elites and saying, now, hand over the money or whatever it was. That wasn't it. But had he been doing that, had that been what he was doing, then they would have been burdened by debt. Implication is he wasn't doing it and they're not. Okay? Verse 47. If the unseen be with them. So if that's their claim, if that's what they're saying, if that's the assertion, then are they writing? So if these people are claiming that they have access to the unseen, then are they writing? So what's the implication? Well, come on then, let's see it. You have written texts. Give us those written texts. We will have a look at them and see if you're right. But they don't have them. Verse 48. And be thou patient for the judgment of thy Lord, and be thou not like the companion of the fish when he called and was angry. Now this can seem like, where did that come from? Well, I'll tell you. Jonah, which is what this is referencing, the companion of the fish, is the only messenger, according to the Qur'an, I think you'll find it at 1080, whose message of warning ended in anything other than total annihilation. So that's the reference. Going back to the beginning of this surah, thou art upon a tremendous tradition. That's why we have the reference here. It's implicit. You see, we have this thing in cinema called subtext, and the ability to pick up subtext is kind of what distinguishes the kind of people who like blockbuster films from people who can watch something with some sort of subtlety to it. This is the underside of this particular verse. The other point is that if you think about the difference in temperament between Jonah, who was angry, if you read the book of Jonah in the Hebrew Bible, he was seriously knocked that these people weren't destroyed. Compare that with the person who Muhammad temperamentally was closest to, and who was the example for him, Abraham, who, I'm going to leave aside what I think happened in Abraham's process of interaction with his own original people, but let's just take the part which we have in explicit form in the Qur'an, where the messengers come to Abraham prior to going to the people of Lot. Did Abraham say, yeah, go on, go get them, those sodomites, let's just wipe them all out? No, he didn't. He pleaded with God that God would forbear. So these are really the kind of, messengers of God. They are, I know people lose sight of this, but they're men, all right? And men have temperamental kind of characteristics. Noah, for example, he's just wipe them all out. Moses, seal their hearts, let them all die. Jonah, he didn't quite get what he wanted. But Abraham, was compassionate. He was forbearing. And Muhammad temperamentally really was following in that line. And so he's guided here away from kind of being sort of, as it were, come on, let's go get them sort of person. However, if you look at the broader context of it, the implication, at least to my mind, is that this is a part of a process of warning as per the standard pattern in which Muhammad was following as one of a sequence. Okay, let's continue. And be thou patient for the judgment of thy Lord, and be thou not like the companion of the fish when he called and was angry. Had not favour from his Lord overtaken him, he would have been cast on the bare shore when he was condemned. But his Lord chose him and made him of the righteous. And now we come to the concluding statement of the surah, or statements. And those who ignore warning almost cause thee to slip with their eyes when they hear the remembrance, and they say, he is possessed. Again, this is a standard reaction amongst the deniers in the event of a warner coming with a process of warning, which invariably, according to the Qur'an, only in the case of Jonah, did not result in total annihilation. And also, they cause thee to slip with their eyes. And again, they're calling him names. They're attacking him. And this relates back to what we had at the beginning of the surah with these types of personalities, hinderer of good, transgressor, sinful, relentless and useless, because he's possessed of wealth and sons. Going back slightly again, neither obey thou every despised swearer of oaths, backbiter, going about with calumny. Well, there you are. This is calumny. They're calling him possessed. Last verse. But it is only a reminder to all mankind. It's only a reminder to the world. This is what this is. The Qur'an is a reminder. So that's the whole block. That's that entire surah. And I hope that I managed to explain it reasonably clearly. My approach, rather than to sort of impose upon you, what I think it means, is to try to explain how I understand it and the processes by which I do understand it, in the hope that it will improve or enrich your engagement with this book. This book is meant to be read. It is, as it says, a reminder for all mankind, but it is only a reminder to all mankind. I'm not here only to sort of inveigh against the traditionalist and the religion that he's constructed. I'm not really that interested in it, quite frankly. I know a lot of people who watch this channel, either are or who come from that background, but it's not my primary interest by any means. But it's not to say, everyone in it is bad or anything like that. No, not at all. I by the same token as I'm certain that there are very good Catholics and Protestants and all kinds of other peoples, but this book is a reminder to all mankind. It's meant to be engaged with, using the faculties that you'd use to read any other kind of book, and by sort of imposing upon it this very high access point where it has to be in a language you don't understand and sung in a way that you don't say anything else, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And somehow that this is a holy deed. I mean, if that does it for you, fine, you knock yourself out. But for the rest of us who actually want to read a book of guidance and get guidance from it, well then, really what you want to do is go to it, and keeping your wits about you, and just sort of increasing in engagement with this book in a way that will help you to find your way around it in a more fluid way. And for me, at least, that's been achieved, not to put too fine a point on it, by moving the traditionalist and his, kind of ongoing preoccupations somewhere else, and just getting on with this book, which says, again, it is from God, it is complete, and it is preserved. God guides whom he guides. Anyway, that's it. I hope everyone's well. I hope to drop another video in the next few days. I'm moving on to other things now, and I want to sort of wrap up certain parts of certain outstanding kind of parts of this project that's still in my head, and getting to the end of this run of surahs from 50 through to the end of the Qur'an is one of those. Anyway, that's all for now. And as I say, I hope to drop another video in the next week, something like that. Bye for now. If you're listening to YouTube, you can download my full translation of the Qur'an free using the button in the top right-hand corner, or buy the hard copy there at 10% less than on Amazon. I also encourage you to sign up for the Qur'anite Plus newsletter on the site to get occasional micro updates. You can download the audio from my YouTube videos to your mobile device using the links in the drop-down below. I recommend meetquranites.com to connect with other Qur'an-alone believers. Like if you like, comment if you have something constructive to say, and subscribe to get more each week. And use the link in the drop-down below to donate if you would like to help me keep doing this. And remember, this life is short, eternity is long. If you want good trees, plant good seeds.